Hi, everybody. This is Kathy L. Murphy, the Pulpwood Queen, here from my little cabin in the woods called Murphy's Law. Now, I've been outside with my friend Barbara because she came by to pick up two more cases of Think Like a Monk because we had so many people signing up to be new members. We are really growing. 800 chapters nationwide, now in 20 foreign countries, and we're growing in leaps and bounds. But tonight, we are very excited because we have, first of all, I'm going to introduce our guest author of the month, our April book of the month, and then at the end, we'll all have a chance to introduce each other and talk, okay? So right now, we can all mute. I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen M. Rogers, who's going to be talking about her book, The Flying Cutterbucks.
Thank you, Kathy, for the lovely introduction. Thank you. Anyone who has their copy, hold it up if you have your copy in front of you. Yay! Yay!
I have my gift set.
And I haven't opened my bottle yet. I'm trying to decide when maybe either my first physical event, when it's safe, or with some family members. But I'm the author of The Flying Cutterbucks. I am so grateful to be the April book of the month. Thank you, Kathy Murphy, for gifting me with this wonderful honor. So let's see. I told Johnny Bernhardt, since she can't be here, that I would share her endorsement. I'll read the first line because Johnny gets my book. When national politics triggers a buried family secret, the Cutterbuck women do what they do best, persevere. So my book is about 4 strong women. 3 of them have a dark, buried secret. And where I had to put on my brave face in order to write this is I decided with my agent's agreement, I just signed on with her, to set the book against the backdrop of the 2016 presidential elections in a little town in New Mexico called Pardon, New Mexico. And then when we finally got, I wrote the book. And then when the publisher, Wyatt McKenzie, came on board, Nancy Cleary's the publisher, then I wrote one final chapter and brought it up to the eve of the 2020 election. However, the final chapter was written November 2019. I could not predict COVID-19, thank God. So the final chapter doesn't have the pandemic and people are standing around holding hands and, but it is what it is. But this is my bravest book to date. I am the author of 4 novels, all traditionally published. Before I became a novelist, I was a frequent contributor to Family Circle magazine and Military Times. So what's a little gal like me doing writing for Military Times? Well, my husband was a fighter pilot. And I wrote about fighter pilots, but I didn't write about the beans and the bullets. I wrote about the emotions, and I wrote about military families. And the first article I sold to Family Circle, which was a huge break for me because that's a big national, they paid well too, was about military families. It was about my husband deploying to the Persian Gulf during the first Gulf crisis. And they bought the rights to a big cover story I had done for Military Times. So, and there's Miss Claire. So, and I do have on, I'm sorry, y'all, I have to do this. These are my leopard print leggings, courtesy of one Claire Fullerton from Malibu, California, by way of Memphis. She gifted me my leopard print leggings when she first let me know that I would be the Flying Cutterbucks would be a selection. But the military is in my blood. I tried to get away from it when I, writing my novels. And then my youngest son announced when he was at Texas Tech, his junior year in college, he called me up and said, I just left the recruiters. And I said, the recruiters. And I'm thinking like baseball, because he was an athlete in high school. He goes, the Army. And I'm like, what? And at the time, this was 2009, I'm like, no, JP, our family served. Daddy has served. Daddy's been to combat. It's time for another family. You don't need to do this. Our family has a long history of military service. And he said, Mom, I'm 22 years old. It's my decision. And I looked at my dog, Bubba, my chocolate lab, Bubba, God rest his soul. And I looked down at Bubba and I looked outside. It was just me and Bubba. My husband was flying off for the airlines at the time. And I said, okay, we'll get behind you 100%. So the reason I told that story is I am not just an old military spouse now, but I'm a military mama. My son is a captain in the Army Reserves now. I have sent him to war. That was one of the hardest things I've ever faced. And when I wrote my third novel, Seven Wings to Glory, I wrote that under adversity with a contract, but I wrote under contract. It's the fastest novel I've ever written, and I think it's pretty good. But I wrote the first chapter right before he deployed. And then I couldn't write while he was at war. And then as soon as he came back and we had our reunion, then I got busy and finished it in time for my deadline, because the mama in that book sends the son to war. So I faced my deepest fears in that book. But the Flying Cutterbucks, when I started this novel, I only had the idea for some strong women, and I wanted to set one of my novels in my native birth state, New Mexico. And yes, I hear my doggies. I was born and raised in Clovis, New Mexico. And for anyone who knows where that is the east side of New Mexico, just a few miles from the West Texas border. We are the forgotten side of New Mexico, not like Albuquerque, Santa Fe, Taos, those beautiful places. We're flat. We're like West Texas. And so I decided it was time. I wanted to write a love letter to the place where I became a writer. If anyone went on Breathless Bubbles in Books today, I shared a few things about where I got my start. My junior year in school, and I'll tell that story real quick. Second day in home ec, what I didn't tell was the full story. We were handed raw eggs. And I don't even know why I signed up for that elective, but because I was young. And we were supposed to decorate and make little like bonnets and draw on the raw egg like it was a baby, and carry our raw egg around for the rest of the day. Now, Kathy's shaking because I know you were in home ec, and Johnny Bernhardt said she flunked hers. And I'm like, I hate this. I'm never getting married, and I'm sure never having children. And I was telling a friend, and I think a friend said, well, the newspaper meets that same period. And like I said in my story this morning on my post, I put on my brave face and I marched down that hallway to the counselor's office. And I was very shy back then. And I do not know how, but I finagled myself and I got on the high school newspaper and I declared myself a writer a week later. And that was really changed the trajectory of my life. And like I said in the post, the first time I felt like I had direction. So I'm 62. I'm not shy about my age because I'm still here. I have been trying to make it as a writer since I was 15. And everything in my writing career has been a stepping stone. So back to the final salute. My writing roots are deep in my birth state of New Mexico. And so that's why I set it in this small town. Where did the name Pardon come from? I was out walking one day and I was just playing around with small town names, and it just showed up, Pardon, New Mexico. And I loved the different plays on pardon, you know, pardon me, or someone gets a pardon, a forgiveness. So forgiveness is in the novel. And then I needed a bad guy. And so there's kind of some things in the backdrop, but a physical bad guy was a creepy cousin named Cousin Dub. And I'm not going to say too much about Cousin Dub, but I had so much fun in the few short chapters that he's there. I say fun. I tried to do what a lot of women have never had the power to do. And so I took back some power there. And the military aspect of the story, I was going to write the fourth novel and no military. I'm like, I've done it. My first three novels have military. I'm done. I've done it. I've written for magazines about the military. It's I want to try something. And I was on my way to an appointment, driving by myself, just driving along, minding my own business. And all of a sudden, Major Shep Cutterbuck showed up. And it's like, I'm Trudy's dad. Trudy's my protagonist in the story. And I'm like, no, I've already written about fighter pilots. I wrote from the male viewpoint in my first novel, The Final Salute. And then he told me, I'm missing in action in Vietnam. And I'm like, okay, you're in. So I'd never written about an MIA. We've had friends that were prisoners of war in Vietnam, but I'd never written, that's one military topic I'd never covered. So as soon as Shepard showed up, oh my God, it's like I started to have the framework. And Trudy Cutterbuck, that's the other thing. I wanted to write about women that will never see 30 again, never see 40, never see 50 again. And so Trudy is 57 when the story shows up, and she's taken an early retirement from Southwest Airlines. So what was fun there, I never was a flight attendant, although just because I married an airline pilot when I was younger, everyone's like, you're a flight attendant, right? I'm like, no, I don't really like to fly. But anyways, Trudy has left Southwest Airlines and she got hired back in the late 70s. So Trudy got to wear the go-go boots and the hot pants. That was fun to kind of do all that research. But she has returned from Dallas to Pardon, New Mexico to help her mom sort through what I would say would be a very cluttered home. Some people would call it clutter, and I'm looking at my office. Other people would call it mementos. Kathy. Other people would call it mementos, souvenirs, especially a woman named Jewel, Trudy's mother, Jewel, who was a very young mother when her husband climbed on a jet, Trudy's dad, and flew off into oblivion and never returned. There are dogs in the book, a couple of cats. There's definitely one cat. He is a feminist, and I will just tell you, his name is Mr. Grumples. And he is Aunt Star's cat. Aunt Star's one of our main characters. Even though Trudy's my protagonist, her Aunt Star, that's her Jewel is Trudy's mother. Star is Jewel's oldest sister. Aunt Star is probably my favorite. Aunt Star is braver than I am. She's an old activist. She marched for women's rights way back in the day, when she wasn't 81 years old, when she had hair and she could put in pigtails and wear cutoffs. And so Aunt Star and Trudy's little sister Georgia, who's 2 years younger, those three are the ones that harbor a very dark secret, because something happened in the Cutterbuck kitchen in 1974, 2 years after Shep has been missing in action. And Jewel Cutterbuck, the matriarch, that's her home, she wasn't there when this dark thing happened. When it happened, Trudy was fixing to turn 15, so her memory is hazy. So throughout the novel, she's bugging Aunt Star. Aunt Star, what happened that night? And Aunt Star is holding on to that secret. Aunt Star cannot let that secret out. And Aunt Star is also very, very protective of her two nieces, Trudy and Georgia. So I've been yakking a lot.
No, you've been doing such a wonderful job telling the story. I just let you go. I mean, it's great. What is wonderful about your story, and when I went on book tour with my book, I took 5 of my Pulpwood Queens with me for a month and a half. So every night we'd sit around and just talk. And by the time we got to, I think it was Atlanta or Georgia or something, we had found out everything you could possibly ever know about each other. But one night we're having a little wine, and somehow we got on the topic of being molested. And it was one of those nights that I'll never forget because everybody had a story. Everybody there had a story. And I thought, these are just 5 random Pulpwood Queens who, told me a story. And I think they say 1 out of every 4, but it's higher than that now. Women deal with these kind of issues. And I think it's wonderful, Kathleen, that you're addressing this. Does anybody else want to jump forward and ask any questions about the book or anything for Kathleen? Yes, Robert.
I've got a question, Kathleen. So you categorize this book as your bravest endeavor to date. Why is that?
Writing about the assaults, that's not what took my bravery. What took my bravery was setting it against the backdrops of presidential elections. And anyone who's read the opening sentence in chapter 1 knows. And my agent was all on board. And I'm like, I'm not even a political person, but just some certain things pushed me. And that was what Aunt Star needed. She needed me to write this book for her. She needed me to give her a voice. Her sister Georgia needed me to give Georgia a voice. Trudy needed that. I gave a voice to every woman and every man who has had to fight off a monster. There are things I wrote about in here that I might not have personally dealt with. But here's something. I'll just tell this story very quickly. I always thought, well, I have that, like some things I've written about. And then I remember, then there's no names mentioned, but right after I married Tom, my fighter pilot hubby, we moved to Tucson and we were invited. It was like a squadron party, or not really an official party. Like everybody go to the bar and the guys would still be in their flight suits. And it's just how it was back then, a long time ago. And I was young. I had long blonde hair. I was early 20s. So I did not, come in an old skin. And the last thing, I probably had, a little bit to drink. The next thing I remember, I was pushed into a dark closet by another pilot. Tom was outside talking, and fighter pilots, they talk with their hands. He was probably out with the buddies out on the patio, and a man I thought was my friend and his wife, I guess she wasn't there, He pushed me into a closet. I was terrified. And the next thing I know, someone opens the closet door, and it's another one of the pilots, and he grabbed me, and then I guess they went and got Tom. What's sad is that the man that pushed me in the closet was a friend. He didn't, he didn't do anything because there wasn't time, because someone heard me screaming, but I was, for those few seconds, that's what I remembered when I was writing this book, because I'd forgotten about it.
It's amazing.
So, can I give a short reading just to show you? Okay, so this isn't about any of that. I want to show you, I want to read something that I had fun writing. And you can get a little feel for Eastern New Mexico in this. It's very short. It's just maybe a page and a half. Is that okay with everybody?
Sure.
Okay, so I have to switch glasses from computer to old lady. Okay, so it's called Graffiti and Graves. But what it is Trudy has this hot new Camaro. Her daddy had a Camaro when he was young. And she bought a brand new Camaro in 2017 to remind her of her daddy. And she has a really sexy silver Camaro. And she takes her mama Jewel for a joyride. And this is out on the flat high plains of Eastern New Mexico. And they're on a narrow road between two small towns. There were no other cars in sight. A quick scan at her gauges, then Trudy bore down on the gas pedal and the Camaro accelerated. Her mother slid the passenger window down again and whooped and hollered like a teenager. Trudy could remember the last time her mother looked so happy. Faster, Shep, faster, Jewel yodeled over the blast of cold air that gushed through the open window. Her eyes brimmed with happy tears. How fast do you want to go? Focusing on the ribbon of blacktop in front of them, Trudy floored it. Who was she to correct her mother in that fleeting moment when Jewel had slipped through a time warp? Supersonic, Jewel yelled back, the mirth in her voice causing Trudy's heart to swell. Zooming by a field of fat pumpkins ready for harvest, Trudy took her gaze off the road long enough to see rivulets of emotion running down the ridges of Jewel's cheekbones, like raindrops on the hood of a car. The decades fell behind them, and Trudy had become daddy in the driver's seat, and Jewel was 50 years younger as they raced along in Shep's '69 Camaro. Jewel squealed with glee. They zipped past fields of corn and cotton and winter wheat. A blue commuter plane rolled down the runway and lifted off as they passed the municipal airport. The plane passed right overhead, and Jewel waved as if the pilots and passengers could see them below. We're the Flying Cutterbucks, Trudy yelled over the sound of the wind whipping her hair around. Jewel's hair stayed in place under her knit cap. Her mother turned, her mouth opened in a big O. You remember? Of course, Trudy thought. Some things you never forget. On family outings when she was young, they'd pile into Mama's station wagon, Daddy behind the wheel, Mama riding shotgun. He'd say, "This is your captain speaking. Ready for takeoff?" And Trudy and Georgia would hang halfway out the windows and flap their arms like jet wings. Bogey would climb on one of the girls' laps and stick a pudgy hand out the window and bellow in his little boy voice, "Ready, set, go." We're the Flying Cutterbucks, Daddy announced into the shiny cigarette lighter he pulled from the dashboard, pretending it was a microphone. Sit back and enjoy the ride. For a few blessed seconds, Trudy's nuclear family was intact. Can you believe we didn't wear seatbelts back then? Jewel hit the power button and the window rolled up and some of the magic faded. Trudy eased up on the gas as the image of a station wagon full of people singing 99 bottles of beer on the wall disappeared into the past.
That's great. Thank you, Kathleen. That's great. That's great. I'm telling you, this has been quite a journey that we've been on. For those of you that don't know, Kathleen has been a book club member for some time. And because I only picked 12 books for the year, it took me a little bit to get her in, but I am very thankful that this was the one, The Flying Cutterbucks. It's a wonderful book. It would be a great film or Netflix series. I just can't tell you how much I enjoyed it. And I just was enjoying too the post today on Breathless Bubbles and Books. For those that got on there, what a lively conversation. And you brought back a lot of memories for all of us when 1974 was the year I graduated from high school. So I remember very well, you know, I didn't get kicked out of home ec. I got kicked out of marriage and family planning. I didn't want to take it. I didn't want to take it because I was 17 when I graduated. I was 17 when I went to college. My God, I was just barely old enough to even go. And everybody goes, well, a good girl gets married or you become a teacher or a nurse. Well, I kind of faint at the sight of blood, so that wasn't ever going to happen, you know. And then my senior year, our French teacher had us go out to the grade school and teach beginning French. And after a couple of fifth and sixth grader classes, I knew that I did not want to be a teacher. So I wanted to be an airline stewardess because I like to help and serve people and I wanted to see the world. And so this book was brought back a flood of memories for me. And it also, I come from a family of secrets because that was the time you weren't supposed to tell. Everything was about appearance. You know, my mother wore the pumps and pearls and always never went to the store unless she looked perfect. And I'm sure, Kathleen, what was your mother like?
My mom's still alive. She's 85. She raised 6 children. Everything was cooked from scratch. She and my dad were married 20 years and my dad left and mom was left with 6 kids. My mother got her independence. It's very sad, but my mother took some temporary jobs. She'd been a church secretary part-time a few years before that. And by the way, not all preachers are nice to work for.
Yeah, that's right.
Kathy, even in the Methodist church, we're both, you know, we've both been Methodist.
We're both
But what my mother did, what saved my mother, and then she was so proud of her career, she got on with civil service. And so she retired in February 2003. I went home from my mother's retirement. She retired as a GS-11. She worked in all kinds of areas. But one of the things my mother was really proud of is she was the go-to person on Cannon Air Force Base for the equal opportunity. Wow. I think I said that right. I don't know what, you know, the terms have changed over the years. But my mom, back in those days, like I said, everything was cooked. Everything was cooked by scratch. There wasn't a lot of money. And what my mother did, my dad doled out so much money. Mother would go to the store every Friday and shop for 8 people. And then on weekends, we always had the best meals. My mother made the best pizzas, the best enchilada casseroles, the best homemade coffee cakes, the kind where you do the yeast and you let the dough rise. We always had candy and soda pop on weekends, but it was the store brand because it was cheaper. If I wanted a Coca-Cola or a Dr. Pepper, I'd go down to my grandmother's house or my aunt across town. And one time I raised a stink at my grandmother's house. Her name was Olga Berg Lamb. because she always had the best chocolate ice cream. I'm a chocolate ice cream person. And I opened up, and for some reason, there was the good stuff. I think it was Borden's Dutch chocolate. And then there was a box called chocolate ice milk. Now, we had ice milk.
Remember that?
Do you remember ice milk?
Oh, I
Yeah.
love ice milk.
It would get the little crystals in it and taste terrible.
Yeah,
It was,
agree.
if that's all you had, you didn't know better. But if you're at your grandma's house and there's like, and I raised a fit, I was little. I think my grandmother gave in and let me have that. But, and by the way, when I was a kid and we would go on family vacations from New Mexico to Ohio, my dad was a farm boy from there. We'd stay in Howard Johnson's occasionally. Howard Johnson's restaurants had the best Dutch chocolate and ice cream, and they would serve one scoop in a little silver dish. I would live every summer to get my Dutch chocolate in a Howard
Chocolate
Johnson.
chip.
Oh, chocolate. It's funny the things you remember. I would like to say this before I forget, and maybe I might post it this week on Breathless Bubbles and Books, but in this book, in a later chapter, Trudy goes up to see Aunt Star. Aunt Star lives in Las Vegas, New Mexico. That is a real town. It's a real historic town. There are over 900 in real life historic buildings in that small town, and it was founded by let's see, I think mining and the railroad. But in the book, I use a real hotel called the Castaneda Hotel. It was a railroad, trackside hotel built by the Fred Harvey Company for the Santa Fe Railroad. And it's a beautiful old building. I toured it with my husband. We got a private tour in May 2017. The reason I wanted to set a crucial chapter there, my grandmother, the one who had that really good ice cream, Olga Berg Lamb, she was a young woman in Iowa. She left her home. She went to Kansas City, had an interview with the Fred Harvey Company, and her first duty station as a Harvey girl was at the Castaneda Hotel in Las Vegas, New Mexico. And she was there from 1928 to 1930, and then she transferred to the Belen Harvey House in Belen, New Mexico. All my mother's people were railroad people. So I grew up in a railroad town. But when I walked into the hotel, when we met the tour director, Kathy Hendrickson of Southwest Detours, and when we went down this one street and pulled up by the curb, if I was ever there as a small child when my grandmother was alive, I don't remember. I don't think I was. I started feeling, it's almost like a spiritual deal, because I knew I wanted to set a scene there, and everything that happens in the novel did not happen in that hotel. It's fiction. I wrote fiction, but I wanted to find a place that I could connect to spiritually in order to be able to write characters that come alive. I tapped into this energy, and supposedly the place is haunted. That's not the energy I tapped into. I tapped into my grandmother's energy. The tour director unlocked the door. The hotel has been totally now renovated and people are staying there. Of course, COVID kind of put a damper on it for a while. As soon as we walked into this huge lobby, it was just the three of us in this big hotel. I just like, oh my God, Grandma, start talking to me. And it's almost like I'm walking in my grandmother's footsteps, because she's been in this hotel. She worked there. She lived there for 2 years. They lived across the street in another building, but that's where she worked, in the dining room and the lunchroom and serving train passengers. And so at one point, Tom and Kathy, the tour director, they were leaning against a counter talking, and we hadn't been there not even 5 minutes. And there was a black and white photograph. This is on my blog, on my website, if anybody wants to go hunt it down. It's called Walking in My Grandmother's Footsteps, or Walking in Her Footsteps. But so I'm looking across the lobby and I see a black and white photo on the wall. It's before the renovation. And there were several people. And I'm like, oh my God, there's some Hardy girls and it looks like some cooks and some other employees. As I started walking closer, I felt it. I knew, I'm like, oh my God, there's Olga. There's my grandmother. And I walked up to it and I just like turned and I'm just like clear across this lobby. I'm like, Tom, get over here. Oh my God, this is my grandmother in this photograph. But then it's like I started second guessing, like, but what if it isn't? So I took a picture. I texted my mother and I texted all of my siblings. I've got one brother I lost years ago, Larry. He's been gone since '83 and he's my muse. But I texted everybody else. I said, is this grandma? And I texted a cousin in Oregon and she's gone now too, because that was her aunt. I said, is this Olga? Everybody said, oh my God. Of course, my mother's like, that's my mother. And I knew then, I hadn't even gone 20 feet. I knew then, okay, I'm supposed to be here. We took a tour of the whole hotel. I didn't go into every room. And so when I took that tour, I took it two ways. I took it as me, just me, or three ways. Me as the writer, me as my grandmother's granddaughter, and then I became Trudy. And I walked through that entire hotel as my character Trudy would. And so I didn't write that chapter for a while. I let it sit inside of me and wrote all these other chapters. But when it came time to write that whole chapter that's set in the old Castaneda, and my book is contemporary. So there's all these historical novels about Hardy girls now. And I knew that wasn't, I'm not called to write that, but I always wanted to write and fit Hardy girls into a story, although I write contemporary novels. So I was able to do that through placing a character in a building that means something to all of our family. And then when COVID hit, they finished restoring it. So one of these days we're all saying, and I hope my mom will still be alive, that we'll all go to the Castaneda and rent several rooms and stay there. And then maybe have a seance to see if grandma will show up.
Never know. All these old hotels have stories, you know, it's all about the story.
Supposedly, it is haunted by what was a real crusty cook. I kind of tapped into that, just some fun stuff where Trudy kind of like, what was that? But the hotel, there's been all kinds of crews that have come, and before it was renovated and bought by a new owner. Some ghost show set up cameras, and I don't want to watch it. But when we were going down this one long dark hallway, I'm like, you know, don't anybody jump out.
That'd be something.
Okay,
how long,
somebody talk.
yeah, how long did this take you to work on this book? Because it sounds like you did a lot of research.
So the original, the working title, I'm going to say it, the working title was called Little House of Shrines. That title came to me years ago with my little sister. We were walking in Clovis, New Mexico. We were home together when my dad was still alive, to check on my dad. And the title came to me. And so we were yakking away about a possible novel down the road. But so the Flying Cutter Bus was my alternative title, and that's what the publisher went with. And I'm like, I'm not married to the Little House of Shrines. Let's go with the new title. It's got action in it. I had an idea for this setting, but I didn't really know the story until I signed with my new agent. And I left one agency and signed with the new agent January of 2017. And I sent her, all she had was a client referral and a one paragraph premise. They didn't mention anything about the backdrop of 2000, of presidential elections. And we had our first phone chat. And, when I was going to sign with her and everything. And I said, I have this idea how to open the book. And I was like, my heart was just racing because I was very nervous. And as soon as I explained what I wanted to do, she kind of laughed and said, oh, go for it. So I started the book. Oh, when I signed with her and she agreed to represent me, then I'm like, oh my God, now the pressure's on. I'm
Hmm.
with the new agent. I have to write a book. That happened when my third novel, 7 Wings to Glory, was releasing that May. So I was gearing up to promote that novel while I was trying to figure out how to be a writer again and, write. Because every book, all of you that have written more than one novel, it's like, this is hard. I don't know what I'm doing. But so I started working on it, and I was 12 chapters in, and Diane 9, a couple of us here are rep by her, Kathy and Joy. She's like, don't send me anything. I like, don't send me the first few chapters because it'll probably change. And she was so right. I would just send her updates. Oh, well, so that's September. No, it was October. I had 12 chapters, and I like to build my manuscripts, even though everything's electronic. I still print stuff to kind of see, even though it all changes. I'm old school. I mean, I started on a manual typewriter. I like to see the pages get fatter. So I took this picture of the little manuscript with my little talisman, and I've got talisman everywhere. Whatever, here's one. She's wearing a little sailor hat for the new book I'm working on. She's holding a book and she has a little sailor hat my husband made for me. But anyways, so I sent this photo of the manuscript at night to my agent, just on my iPhone. I just took this picture. I'm going to put it on Facebook, just, making progress. And she wrote me back within 5 minutes. This is on an email. And she goes, oh, I love the photo. It looks fantastic. Keep writing. I can't wait. And she goes, guess where I'm at? And I said, she goes, I'm in New York City for the Women's Media Awards. I'm like, what is that? And that was with one of her clients. April Ryan was getting this huge She Persisted award. I Google. She was there with all these other women, Jane Fonda, Hillary Rodham Clinton, Gloria Steinem. I think, I just had a brain cramp. She's an actress and activist. Oh, she was in the movie, The Big Gap. The actress, it's so cute. Ashley Judd. Yeah. So I'm like, oh my God. And I'm from this little town in New Mexico, and the woman who wants to represent my novel is in New York at this. Why is she giving me the time of day? When I told her that later, she cracked up. Matter of fact, I just told her that story the other day on the phone. But as some of my friends know, they have to hear this. I've had some great successes, but I have to box back. I think I've shared this with Robert in the messages. Joy, you've heard it. Claire, Kathy, I've had to box back all my life of this self-esteem, and some people call it imposter syndrome. I know what it is. I could barely read by the 3rd grade. I can't spell. I can't do math. I know what it is. But like I said in the post today, I have this, just like an old mule, like I'm going to make it. And I always knew I would sell to national magazines. I am the queen of rejection. I faced so much rejection early in my career, and I've still faced it. It can do something to you, but I always just thought, if I just keep going, I can make it. And now I've lost my train of thought of the point I was going to make.
No, I think you made a great point. It's persevering in great difficulty. And right now, everybody is struggling so hard because we're trying to sell books, and we can't go to bookstores, and we can't do book tours, and so we're doing radio and podcasts, and I'm trying to come up with innovative ways to get all of you featured. But the power of a great story is what's going to give your book legs, and you've got it. So once we're sharing you out there with the world. We're showcasing you on Breathless Books, Bubbles and Books. And now I want to open it up for everybody so you can have some comments. How many of you have had the opportunity to read it yet? Great. I'm going to go back to Valley View. Anybody have any comments about, it's always interesting when you write fiction because everybody thinks it's true. And when you write a memoir, they always think it's not true. So
I have a question. Can I ask a question? So Kathleen, and I loved your book, and you're talking that you did a few books. There's so much in the Flying Cutter books. Is there a particular group or type of person you found that the book resonates with, and is it the same group as your other books?
Oh. I think the Flying Cutter books, I've had some male readers, but I would say, women's fiction, strong women. Yeah, there's some political stuff in there, but I've had people from, used to be, you could sort of be in the middle. I had a book club where I know a lot of their members were more to the right. Oh my God, they read the novel. We discussed the basic story. That's a great question because my first novel was called The Final Salute. I had about half male, half female. But the scary thing about that, the original came out in 2008. I wrote, my main character was a male fighter pilot. I wrote from the male viewpoint. How did I do that? Well, anytime I would holler at my husband, honey, he would stand over because I'm not a pilot. And I knew so many pilots. I just, I understood, at least at that time. When my second novel came out, Johnny Come Lately, I thought, this is my I'm leaving it behind. I'm writing nothing but women's fiction and about family drama and social issues. And my character, Johnny Kitchen, she's 43 in that book. And then Seven Wings to Glory's the sequel, and she's 45 in that book. I definitely, so to get to your question, I lost probably a lot of my male readers from the first novel when I jumped to the second, but you know what? It's okay. A lot of them still follow me and always coming on, congratulating me or supportive. And then my fifth novel I'm working on, there is no military. There's no military, nothing against military, y'all. Everybody out there, I love the military. I live it. But I have to think, okay, I think my fifth novel it will really appeal more to women. And yet I think Robert, you're our token male tonight. Tag, you're it. Robert, I've read some excerpts. I haven't read Robert's debut novel yet. I can't wait to. But people who think and are deep thinkers, and people who aren't afraid to show their emotions, I think we'll get that. Thank you. Claire, you had a question. Thank you, Meryl.
Thank you.
Okay, I just want to say how delightful and incredibly dynamic and charismatic, and it's such a joy to see you here. And so there was that. And your grandmother's name, is that Norwegian or is it Swedish?
It's Norwegian, but when I was a little girl and I had bone white hair then, I knew that on that side of the family we had my great grandmother immigrated at 15 from Norway. But I thought it sounded better if you were Swedish. So I told people that I was Swedish. Yes, and I know. Yes, thank you. Yes, Olga Berg Olga Berg was her maiden name, and then she married my granddad Patrick, who was Scottish, Irish, but they came. So great. I'm terrible with family trees. They 15 years old, got on a boat. She left Norway, and it's called Bergen, Norway. I've never been, but maybe I will go, because I've heard our Pulpwood queen, she's not here tonight, Janet, who's her latest novel takes place in Janet Oakley.
The
Takes place in-
Quisling Factor.
Yes.
Yeah. That sounds great. Well, maybe we'll all go together and Tom will fly us.
Oh, hey, Claire, I don't know if you were part of that post this morning, but
Of course I was.
okay, Kathy Murphy was talking about wanting to be a flight attendant, their stewardess. And I said, I was having fun, and I said, so for those who might not know, Kathy's cousin Terry Purcell, he's a dreamboat, by the way.
Yeah.
Terry read the book. Terry is a retired Air Force pilot, and he retired from Delta Airlines. My husband retired Air Force pilot, retired from American. So I said to Kathy, okay, Kathy can start an airline, and we'll get an airliner, and Tom and Terry can be our pilots. And and then Kathy said she'll make, because she loved her skills she loved in that marriage and family class, and anybody who is a seamstress, we'll make our flight attendant uniforms and tiaras, and we'll fly around the world. It's fun to pretend.
It is. One last question. It seems to me that you were honored maybe twice by the Military Writers of America, was it?
Oh,
Can you tell us about that?
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Claire. Okay, so last year in 2020, so 2020, yeah, we all, okay, COVID and all that, but a lot of babies were born, a lot of good things happen in the world, life goes on. But in 2020, in September, I was honored by the highest award. MWSA stands for Military Writers Society of America, and I was honored with the Founders Award for my 7 Wings of Glory. And the founder's name is Bill McDonald. On Facebook, he goes by Reverend Bill McDonald, because he's a spiritual man. And then 2 years in a row, I've been nominated. So I was MWSA Writer of the Year finalist in 2019 and 2020. And then Johnny Come Lately, my second novel, won a gold medal from Military Writers in 2015. So I've been a member since 2008. Gone to a lot of the conferences. They're usually in different cities, Dayton, Phoenix. This one coming up is supposed to be in New London, Connecticut. Was supposed to go last September, and that was canceled. So they're planning on trying to do the physical, but we'll see. But thank you, Claire. And that plaque right there, y'all, you can't really tell. I spent some money at Michael's, because I took it and got it framed. But I told Tom, I'm like, it's going to be expensive, but it's not every year you get the Founders Award. That's my Founders Award.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Kathy, you picked the people who, Ruthie or Kathy.
Well, so as you're speaking about the characters, it feels like they just come to you, like they're just revealed to you. And could you say a little bit more about that? Like, how they land in your space, and then do they lead to the next character? I loved how you said all of a sudden you're just driving or whatever, and this character lands and is somehow embodied or something for you.
Ruthie.
And
God.
you have a relationship with that character, it feels like, immediately. And then do they lead you to the other characters? I'm just fascinated with how that reveals itself.
That is so awesome. I love that question. We wrestle it out. Oh my God, they will not leave me alone. So for instance, I years ago in the 90s, I had a name and an idea for this character named Johnny Peoples, a woman. And I just latched onto that last name, Peoples, and I was all about Johnny Peoples. I didn't really know what her story was, but I wrote about her in a journal after I read Writing Down the Bones by Natalie Goldberg. I found that old journal the other day. So Johnny, when she finally revealed herself to me in 2007, January, at a writing class at SMU, I wrote the first lines in a writing class at night for, continuing ed, non-credit. She said, my name is Johnny Kitchen. I'm like, okay. And so Ruthie, so here's what happens. Sometimes it's the name. I don't even know how to, sometimes it's a feeling like they become real to me. Now I'll tell you this story. So I lived with Johnny Kitchen through the writing. Johnny Come Lately took 6 years because I was so busy still promoting The Final Salute. One day, Tom came home after a 3-day trip flying for American. I'm sitting there promoting the first novel when I'm supposed to be writing the second one. He walked in. I'm sitting at my kitchen table, although I have a great office. He comes in his airline uniform. What you doing? I said, I'm promoting the first novel. And he goes, Kathy, I want to see Johnny Come Lately published before I die. I'm like, okay. And yeah, it was, so he's my silent partner cheerleader. You know what? The next time he came home from a trip, I met him in the garage and said, oh my God, Johnny just wrote a letter to Dear Abby. So I lived with Johnny Kitchen through Johnny Come Lately, and then in the sequel, 7 Wings to Glory. Although if you want to read 7 Wings to Glory as a standalone, I wrote it as a standalone. You don't have to read the Johnny book. Here's what happened when I was trying to find Trudy Cutterbuck in the Flying Cutterbucks. I knew she was a retired flight attendant for Southwest, and I knew even at 57, she still had to look good. Sometimes, I get to live vicariously through even guy characters. So, but anyways, there was something like I'm like, okay, who are you? Who's your spirit? I need to really know you. And I was driving somewhere, once again, driving. I hadn't left a block from my house. And I'm really worried about this manuscript because I don't know what the heck I'm doing, even though I had 3 out there in the world. And here's what I did. All of a sudden, and Flying Cutterbacks has no relation to any of the other novels. All of a sudden, protagonist from my last 2 books, I said, Johnny, you have to help me. You have to help me find Trudy. Johnny, you don't get to live in this next book, but I need you to help me find Trudy. And that instant, I felt a relief because Johnny Kitchen, she's like my best friend. Like, she's sitting here with me. Y'all just can't see her. And it's almost like when I lost my little brother in 1983, it took me 3 years. I was sharing this with Johnny Bernhard the other day because she's had a loss. It took me 3 years to let go of my little brother. I was on a snow-packed road in Alaska. I may write about Alaska tomorrow. I'm not sure yet. I got to do my post tonight. I was in my 20s. It was 20 below zero. I was running on a snow-packed road on a remote Air Force base. The Alaska range up here, the sky crystal blue. My little brother had been gone 3 years, and I had a little baby at home with a babysitter. And out of the blue, I'm just running along, trying to survive, looking out for moose, seriously. And I'm like, Larry, I release you. I can't carry you anymore. I release you. I love you. but I release you. And at that moment, a healing came over me. Now, the reason I tell you that, that's the same thing with my characters. When I asked Johnny Kitchen for help, it's like I asked my little brother Spirit, help me. I'm a young mother. I have to live. I just can't carry you anymore. The minute I asked Johnny Kitchen to help me find Trudy Cutterbuck, Trudy just started coming, her little sister Georgia, and then Aunt Star, and then Jewel, the matriarch. When I write novels, and this is what's happening in my current work in progress, my poor husband has to hear me whine every single day. And my dogs that you hear. I say I worry them into being. Even when I'm not writing, everything out there, like a neighbor the other day sassed me a little and shamed me because I haven't seen my grandkids because of the pandemic. I'm like, oh, honey, you better watch out. You just might get yourself written into a book. I say that to try to be funny. I'm being snarky and I apologize, but I think I've been writing so long that I don't like separate. Probably I should, maybe it's, I'm a writer 24/7, and every dream is potential. Whether you, Ruthie, you're a therapist, right? Oh my God. So when yeah, well, I was on my way to a former therapist when Shep Cutterbuck shows up, whatever that means. But my therapist now, Maggie, she's awesome. She has to hear me whine too. But we talk a lot about the creative process. And I will share this with everyone who's working on a novel or a memoir or your first book or your 10th book, and it's still the struggle. Robert, you're working on your second one. So I found this journal the other day, dated 1996, 1997, writing down the bones. That was the journal I kept after I read Natalie Goldberg's book. I had 3 copies of that and I've given them all away. That book helped free me up in the 90s. I'd already been published in magazines, but I was wanting that novel. My first novel took 16 years to figure out and a lot of rejection until I found a publisher. But in the journal, I opened up the journal and I'd read it to y'all, but there's some curse words in there. Here's the whole thing about this one journal entry. What was I doing? Whining. It's so hard. I don't know what I'm doing. People only think I know what I'm doing. People only think I know how to write. Then what I was doing, I was calling on my character Tuck Westerfield, the fighter pilot. This is when I was working on my first novel. I'm like, how have I rewritten those first 7 chapters? Now what am I going to do? And so I guess what I'm trying to say, for me, it's the writing process is messy, and I don't outline, but I kind of have the idea for an ending. And so I write kind of toward that ending. Like I always say, you got 2 pieces of bread. If I could, they'd both be heels, because the rest of the bread, the heels are the best. But you got 2 pieces of bread, your beginning and your ending. And so I spend everything else making the sandwich. And sometimes I make it over here. Other times I write out a sequence and I cobble all my books together. Somebody else talk.
I've got a question. Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So when you talked about your characters and how they come to you, this is a question I have burning because it's something I deal with as well. How do you know to let go of them when you're done with a book, or do they let go of you?
Okay, that's a great question. And Kathy, you're next. After I finish, it changes with each book because my first novel, when I thought it was done the first 3 years and I had an agent interested, oh my God, I was crying and sobbing like, bye y'all, and had no idea I'd spend 13 more years with those characters trying to perfect the novel. And by then we were all like, you think we're still in love with each other? No. So seriously, each book is different. When I finish a novel and I know that I've done the best that I can do, and I always let my work get cold. Oh, and another thing, I read everything out loud, forwards, backwards. I read into my recorder. I go for walks. I listen. I can't stand my own voice, but I listen for the pacing. I listen for the cadence, and I'll always know if I go, more work. It's easy or to let them go once. Everyone who's got at least one novel out there, tell me if you agree. It's easier once I know they're at a good home, whether it's with a literary agent who will pitch it, or you finally have a publisher, even long before the book's out. Once I know that they're not homeless living with me. Because once I finish, I don't really consider that I'm the home. They need a home. They need to get out of here and go out into the world and, not hang out when they're 50 and 60 and, getting in the refrigerator. What's for dinner? Does that help?
Yeah, that's a great answer, because it's kind of like, everyone has their own process, and some people, they're pansters, some are plotters, but then what do you do with the characters when the story's over? Because sometimes we finish a really good book and the characters continue to live on for us. So as a writer, as an author, what do you face on that extent?
Oh, well, let me just follow up with that. When I finished the Flying Cutterbugs, before I added the final chapter, I thought the book I'm writing now, I thought that it would be a sequel to the Cutterbugs. And finally, I just canned all that. And I said, no, these new characters get to live in their own story. But I think if you're writing a series, then you still get to live with some of those characters. I've only written, I guess it'd be a series, is Johnny Come Lately and Seven Wings, a lot of those same characters, but then you introduce new characters in the second book. So my characters always are with me though. Like I can call all of them up, even some secondary characters or just minor people that show up and walk through somewhere and say hi. Because they all, and animal characters are crucial, I think. Kathy Ramsberger, did you have a question?
Sure, thanks. I've got a couple. First of all, viewing, I've got two quick questions. The first is, would you talk a little bit about the State of Texas Award that you got recently, where it's going to be shelved? And the second question is, I'd like to ask how you dreamed up Loopy.
Okay.
She's my favorite character.
Oh my God, I love Loopy too. Okay, the first question? So my second and third novels, so Johnny Come Lately and Seven Wings to Glory, are now in the permanent collection at the Texas Center for the Book. And that's housed inside, if I'm saying this right, the Texas State Library. So, it's, to me, I made contact with the coordinator through someone else. And when I told her a little bit more about me, and she's like, let's talk. I'm calling you. And we talked on the phone. I'm old enough to be her mother. Oh my God, it was nonstop. Both of us. We had so much fun. And she invited me to send those two novels. And I decided to send the hardback versions that was released in 2018 from Thorndike Press out of Maine. They're one of the largest leading large print publishers in the United States, and their primary customers are libraries around the world. And so I was thrilled when Thorndike Press and the original publisher, Camel Press, struck a deal. And because then I thought, oh my gosh, that's going to get, it's hard sometimes with smaller presses to get your books in libraries. But so I made that little announcement today because I got the email with the photo, and oh my God. So
it's a really big deal when you get your book featured like that.
thank you. And I don't know if it was a sheer curtain, but so for everyone who hasn't seen it, there's a shelf and there's the 2 hardback covers of Johnny Come Lately and 7 Wings to Glory. And then in this big window, kind of a sheer type curtain or screen, you can see the outline of the Capitol in Austin. So thank you. Thank you. And so basically when I die, the books are still there. So that's why it's important. And
well, that's pretty.
And my little grandsons that I'm going to go see, and after I get my second shot. Okay, what was the next question, Kathy? Loopy. Okay,
Loopy.
so Loopy Boleyn. Loopy makes her first appearance in chapter 3. Loopy is the owner of Loopy's Diner in Pardon, New Mexico. Loopy is Latina. Loopy grew up in Pardon, and she was best friends with Georgia, Trudy's little sister, and they were like on the high school drill team and all that in high school. Loopy's grandmother, we never meet Guadalupe. Guadalupe was the founder of Loopy's Diner, and Loopy went off to Yale and got 2 degrees, a master's degree, lived around, did all kinds of things, left behind that small little dusty New Mexico town. And when her grandmother died, Loopy came back to run that diner. And so in the novel, Loopy's Diner is a place, it's not very big, probably a little hole in the wall, to keep down the overhead. You know, she's like a one woman, maybe a cousin comes and helps. Loopy represents a safe place where people of any walk of life can come. It doesn't matter what your sexual orientation, it doesn't matter what skin color, it doesn't matter what you believe. You come to Loopy's, it's a safe place. I have to tell you a funny story. My neighbor down the street, Domingo, he's moving soon. Domingo read The Flying Cutterbugs. Domingo's wife and son died last year. He just had knee surgery, so he's a new man. He can walk good. Domingo has read The Flying Cutterbugs. Domingo has taken he's very partial to Loopy, but Domingo, she's never called Lupita in the novel. Domingo calls her Lupita. Every time I see him when I'm out walking, you know, I'm social distancing, he'll come down his driveway and he'll say, I put the GPS coordinates into Pardon and I'm trying to go see Lupita. And so just yesterday, I'm standing out there. We're talking about a fictional character named Loopy, but I'll call her Lupita for Domingo. He read my book. And he's like, I said, hey, you're walking good. You've got your new knees. And he goes, I've got to be ready to dance with Lupita. Okay, he's in love with a character that I created.
That is such high praise.
So, but Loopy,
I'm in love with her too.
On a serious note, oh, thank you. Okay, so Loopy's also an activist. So we've got Old Aunt Star and we've got Loopy. Those 2 gals, so Loopy's not family, but she's actually the 5th strong woman in the book. We've got the 4 family members and we've got the friend Loopy. And between Loopy and Aunt Star, the other women, and particularly Trudy finds her courage through Loopy and Aunt Star. And Trudy's a reluctant activist, that in a way, or she was early in the book. And I kept thinking, oh my God, well, I've never worked in a diner. I don't know how to, and I just like, my husband's like, you overanalyze everything. And see, I'm even going through that right now in the new novel. I want to have a character that's a veterinarian. It's not the protagonist, but I'm like, oh my God, a veterinarian. My husband's like, Kathy, you're over analyzing. And I have a tendency. When I was going back to college years ago, my sons were in high school, and they came home and I was studying my biology book like I was actually reading the textbook. Thomas came in and he looked at me, and he's almost 36 now. And he goes, Mom, you're taking this whole college thing way too seriously. And then before tests, he's like, Mom, here's the thing. Don't overanalyze. You overanalyze everything. And half the time you overanalyze and you get the question wrong on a test. But thank you for asking about Loopy.
Well, it works. It works because you do such meticulous research, and it shows in your books.
You know,
and you write what you know as well.
Yes, all of that. And then I try to tap in to that heart and that reader empathy. But Morning Dove, her main character, Claire, remind me her, not Millie.
Hi, yeah, Millie Crossan.
Millie, okay. In Morning Dove, it's so beautifully written. It's first person. Millie is very close to her brother. And anybody who's had a sibling, whether it's a brother or sister, and I won't give anything more away, Claire, but you handle that sibling, there's sibling love and there's sibling rivalry. And you just tap, whatever you're writing about, you just, as a writer, you just tap into it. So sometimes, so here's the thing for anybody, ask yourself this sometimes. Whatever you're writing, it doesn't matter. I'm not talking about ghosty stories. I'm just talking about anything. What would it feel like for you to walk into a cemetery at midnight all by yourself and not many lights on? Doesn't have to be a spooky cemetery. What are your thoughts? I had my character in, was it Johnny or Seven Wings? I think it was Johnny Come Lately. She drove to a cemetery and parked the car because she drove there because she had no place else to go. Something terrible happened at home and everybody was upset. So she went to the one place where nobody would talk back, nobody would tell her how to feel. And she went and she sat there at the gates going into the cemetery to be with the dead. I have done that. And
I have too, Kathleen. I write in cemeteries. Love it.
Wow. Okay. You're braver than I am.
No, they're what are they going to do to you? They're just there to care for you. But I think some of my greatest inspirations came, this is for Claire Fullerton, at Holland Cemetery. You're going to get off campus.
I love that. Anybody else have anything? Eileen.
I have a question. Well, I have a statement, I guess, or I am so intrigued by your process and your you're reaching deep, but I also think that you do research, because I remember a story about a woman that was the stewardess, that you modeled a character after her, and you know that she was always dressed perfectly and all. So which do you prefer? Do you just let them come to you? Do you find somebody? Which is your favorite way to get a character?
Oh gosh, Eileen, thank you for reminding me of one of the things, which I'm going to have to reach out to some people and get all brave and call some people and say, can I pick your brain? So for Trudy, I tapped into one gal, Joan Cersei White. God bless your soul, Joan. You're gone now. Joan was a flight attendant. We talked on the phone one time, 2 hours. And I told her what I was trying to do at the time. And she didn't live to get to see this book, but her husband, Sam, bought the book. She told me stories. I asked her questions. She just told me what it was like, and she wasn't she didn't get hired back in the day when they were still stews or stewardess. She waited till her kids were older, so I got her perspective
Mm.
of being a little bit older. Then I talked to this beautiful, beautiful flight attendant at United. She talked to me for 4 hours and she told me stories. Oh my God. And one of those stories stayed with me. And she's very beautiful. She's married. She has a son now, maybe a teenager. Just this one, I mean, she's just gorgeous and she's a very lovely. And when she was younger and first got hired, and by the way, she also speaks, I think she speaks Spanish and maybe one other language. She was walking, you know, doing the overhead bins, and some guy on the rear end made some comments. She went up, told the captain. When they landed at the next city, and I used this, I used a scenario. They were met at the gate. This, you know, back before 9/11, the people could come and go at the gates and stuff. They were met by security, and the guy, this is in real life, the guy was handcuffed and hauled off. And when he was being hauled off, he called her every foul name in the book. So, okay, and then could I just say this, in Seven Wings to Glory and in Johnny Come Lately, I don't want to give too much away, but there is a character in that first is introduced early on in Johnny Come Lately. His name is Stephen Tuttle, and he's in the National Guard. Good looking young guy. He was Johnny Kitchen's oldest son's best friend in high school. They were in like a band, like punk, hard rock. I'm getting it all wrong now. My oldest son would slap me because I've been too far away from that book. His unit, his National Guard unit gets called up and he goes to Iraq, and he is he had half his face blown off. And I was afraid to write his character because I'm like, oh my God, I don't know anything about that. Oh my God, here's what happened. And Douglas, if you ever see this, God bless you. I was reading the newsletter from Military Writers Society of America, and Douglas Sierpinski was being interviewed about his facial reconstruction and the 100 surgeries he's had. And I remember thinking, oh, I can't contact him. He doesn't know me from Adam. I don't want to intrude on his privacy. I contacted him. I wrote to the gal who wrote the article. Oh my gosh, he helped me so much. And I told him, I said, I'm nervous. I'm afraid. I don't want to, you know, he put me at ease. And he is mentioned in my acknowledgments in the back of Seven Wings. So in Seven Wings to Glory, when my character Johnny Kitchen faces Stephen on a college campus, because she's going back to college and she faces this young man, her oldest son's best friend, I felt Douglas's hand telling me this is what she's going to see and this is going to be her reaction, because he'd had those reactions from people, and people don't mean, you know. So does anybody know a veterinarian I can call for my new book?
You know, I think you just have to wait a while. I think things are just, they kind of find you. Your characters find you, the connections find you. It's just give it a chance. You'll be walking down the street and there'll be a veterinarian coming down the other way and you'll be able to ask the question.
I mean, we do have the vet. I could call up Dr. Weed and ask him. That's a good idea. You know, Eudora, you said connections. Eudora Welty, there's a famous quote. Oh, Kathy, you're the Eudora Welty expert. Kathy Ramsberger. Kathy, you both Kathys. The other two Kathys have been to her house. Isn't there a famous quote where Eudora talks about connections, finding the connections?
Yes. Yes.
Kathy Murphy, you're muted. You're muted.
What I was going to tell you, I do know a vet. You know Heidi Tidescriber, my hometown Eureka
Yes.
sister is married to the hometown vet, Roger.
Oh,
I can connect.
Hey, Roger. I'll be
Roger Beckman.
Roger and I are going to become buddies.
I will connect you.
Thank
And
you,
he's
Kathy.
the perfect person to talk to because he is a wonderful guy. Wonderful guy. So
And I don't know if anybody on here, y'all be honest with me. If you, let me ask you all, everybody volunteer, if you're working on a character and you don't know something, or it could be even the most minor character in a certain profession, are you shy at first about contacting someone to find out? Or you, Kathy, you're shaking your head no. Kathy Murphy.
I reach out. I mean, that's how I've gotten where I am today. I'm brave. And if they say no, I go, thank you. That was really sweet, but have a good life, you know. And almost every time they come back and say, well, you know, let's talk about this. You know, you just have to be sweet. But I want everybody to know here tonight that every single one of you are going to be Pulpwood Queen book club selections if you have not already been made. So I know Kathy didn't know, and I know that some of you already are. I mean, Robert, let's go around the room. I want to introduce everybody because this is the International Pulpwood Queens and Timber Guys book club author. So Robert Gwaltney's from Atlanta, Georgia, and you've got a book. It's coming out. Talk about it.
Yes, yeah, sure. So I think I know everyone. I've not had an opportunity to meet on Juliet. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? So it's a pleasure to meet you.
You're going to meet her. She's awesome.
So I have a novel coming out in January, and entitled The Cicada Tree. It's a work of Southern fiction in the Southern Gothic tradition, and I'm so excited that Kathy has decided that it's going to be the February 2022 International Pulpwood Queen Book Club selection. So I'm really excited, very grateful.
That's right. And TK, I'm just, yours is in the stack. I haven't read it yet, but she's got a wonderful book that, and we had a wonderful conversation today. So hang on, I will be back with you, but tell us about your latest book. She's in Birmingham, Alabama. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My latest book, oh my gosh, I spent 8 years writing this book. It's nonfiction, and it's the title of it really says everything, so I'll let it speak for itself. But with this little prequel, Birmingham, Alabama was a boom town in 1870 when the 3 elements to make steel were discovered, and it grew so fast that they called it the Magic City. So that you need to know that, because the title of my book is Behind the Magic Curtain: Secret Spies and Unsung White Allies of Birmingham's Civil Rights Days. And I'm very excited about it. It's gotten some great reviews, and you know, one never knows what one's baby is going to do or not do out in the world. So
hang tight.
Thank you, Kathy, for putting it on the list to read.
You're almost at the top. Okay, Kathy there's 3 Kathleen, Kathy. It's confusing. Kathy Ramsberger, tell us about your book that I actually have 2. I have a manuscript and I have your latest book, and I'm just finished reading it. So tell everybody what it is. And where are you? I forgot, Kathy, where are you?
I'm in the state of Maryland, Maryland suburbs of DC.
Yes.
And my family is from South Carolina. So, and my husband is from New Jersey, so can't leave him out. Yes, Eileen. So you saw how excited I was. You made my year. Thank you so much, Kathy. Very much from the bottom of my heart. And thank all of you who have supported me as Pulpwood Queens. So my novel, I'm still like basking in this news. My first novel is called Shores of Our Souls. And it is about a man who works for the UN, who's from Beirut, and a woman, young woman, who her first job is with the Metropolitan Museum of Art. They have very different histories. They're very different ages. They're very different cultures, educations, everything. Anything you want to think about, and that's the way I wanted to make them. And they come together and they fall in love and don't really want to be in love because there are complications everywhere. And the book is about what happens next and how they change each other's lives. And the second book is about orphans, child soldiers, humanitarian efforts, and whether it works. And the first part takes place in southern Sudan. And then a lot of trauma happens and the young woman has to come back to the States. And it's the aftermath of her humanitarian career as well, which is a good thing. And she falls in love, so.
Okay, Anju, you're next. And I want you to see what I'm wearing.
I know, I noticed. Thank you so much.
I've got my, you've got to tell your background, because when she sent me her book, she sent me all these things from India. I was like, so anyway, I just finished, and I have it right here. I just finished her book, Duty and Desire, and I am so hooked. It's a romance, and it's the beginning of a series. And I've watched all these Bollywood films, but I haven't really read any books. And this book it's incredible, the storytelling, and it's introducing people to how things work in other cultures, and it's fabulous. So tell us your background too, Anju, because we've talked. So.
Oh yeah. Well, first of all, it's an honor to be on your book list for 2022. I mean, I was just floored because this series, I've been developing it for 20 years. I've gotten over 500 rejections from agents, publishers, 3 agents who couldn't sell the book, publishers who just didn't know what to do with my book, my series. And you just kept telling me, no, 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 and thanks, but no thanks. And who honestly wanted to read about a country and its people in the way that they've already been used to hearing about it. But you know, that country and its people, which is namely modern Indian women, has changed a lot from, you know, over the last 20 years. And what you see on TV is not what you get. I grew up in Hong Kong. Mom was India, you know, in a very Indian environment. Mom and dad from Jaipur, and that's where we used to go back every summer. So I grew up in Hong Kong, but I've also lived in Singapore, Australia, India for a good 6 to 7 years. And now here we are in the US. So, you know, I would say I didn't just go around as a tourist. I had the benefits of actually living in these locations and getting to know the people and understanding what it's like. So this series has been through a journey of torture and hell, if you know, if that's the simplest way to put it forward. And, you know, all I can say is I could have easily, and Kathy asked me, you know, what kept you going? Why didn't you give up? And I have so the funny thing is, after being told by more than 500 people, nobody wants your book and nobody knows what to do with you. 4 months after the book released, the entire series went to option to Hollywood. And so they're looking, it's too big for a film format. So we're looking at Netflix scale series. So that was a real surprise. Thank you. Completely unexpected. And this is after 500 people telling you. So every time I see this, I'm like, really? You know? And then in January, it ranked on the Amazon bestsellers list and cracked through 3 Asian lit categories, which was, again, a shocker, you know. And then come February, March, I find out that there's this wonderful woman by the name of Kathy Murphy who has fallen in love with the book cover. And then now she's fallen in love with the book. And I'm like, really? A gorgeous looking American woman understands this book? And
Love this book. I love it.
it's very hard to believe, especially, it just is, you know.
Now you have to explain this to me. This is what came to me. And I
Yes.
was like, oh my gosh, you know, you've got, and it's all addressed in, tell me about this.
So I've spent so much of my life developing the series alone. And as writers, we write alone. I was determined that when this book finds a home, which is what Kathleen was just talking about, when this book finds a home and the series finds a home, I don't have to celebrate alone. I'm going to celebrate it with everybody. So in Jaipur, India, I got swag made, which ties to the book and the series, so that you're not just reading about India and its people as a book. You're not getting it from second-hand information, media, or, you know, Bollywood movies like Slumdog Millionaire throws out. So then you have this very one perspective angle. How many times have you heard about, you know, the lifestyles of the rich and famous in India? I bet you really haven't. And, you know, you probably, so that's where the perspective came in that, well, I wrote this book and developed the series alone, but I can celebrate with everybody. So the book begins with a big fat Indian wedding. And so I got real wedding invitations made.
Beautiful. I mean, it's just incredible. I'm going to frame it. It's the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen in my life. I love it.
I wanted to make it an immersive experience because I've been living in this universe for so long. By the way, the city and the locations don't exist in India at all. So I had to create cities from scratch, towns from scratch. But you know, that's a feeling of, I want to find my reader. I want to celebrate with them, celebrate the journey. So I had these real wedding invitations made. So instead of seeing a story map or a family tree, like you would at the beginning of many sagas, what you're getting is a wedding invite. And so Kathy, all the names you see, those are the characters you will come across in different books.
Yeah.
And that was just the beginning. And then I thought,
Very clever.
well, you know, now as for books 1 and 2, because I want to invite you and take you to the country and hold my hand with me, because I've been on this journey for so long alone. And then I had these dupattas made. Dupattas are like Indian stoles, which match, you know, the salwar kameez that we wear. And so I got them dyed specifically to match the color of the book covers for books 1 and 2. Yep, there you go. So when you wear the dupatta, which is raw silk, by the way, which is raw silk, it's real silk. You're draping an Indian woman's fabric. You're in her skin. And then I got the bangles made, which match the dupatta and match the book covers of books 1 and 2, because that symbolizes for many Indian women a married woman. And of course, the bindi packet, which
you take it off.
the bindi packets, which are these little stickers which we dot in the middle of our eyebrows, and that signifies a married woman. And so I thought, you know, why not create an experience for you so that you don't have to say, I wish I could go. Well, I'm taking you there. Hold my hand. Let's go. Let's travel together.
I hope you all are listening to this. These are great ideas on taking you there. I mean, how wonderful. I'm collecting locust shells for you, Robert. I'm collecting locust shells. So I'm coming up with something very special. So go ahead. Go ahead.
And that's in the simplest form, you know, what all that all the swag is about. But at the heart of the story, as you go deeper and deeper in the layers, it's about domestic violence, it's about abuse, It's about a woman's struggle to stand up for herself, because now that there's so much wealth, well, you've got the trappings of wealth, which kicks in. And so I wanted people to understand that domestic violence and abuse can happen to anyone from any strata of society, any education level. And the more educated the people are, when you're talking about abusers, the more subtle and the higher the level of brainwashing that happens. And you know, it's a very, very simple, and I have a nonprofit organization, Georgia based, who is to market and promote behind me on the series. So all of this just kind of happened so quickly. And, you know, I ask myself so many times, why didn't I give up? And I'm not out there to save the world. I'm not out there to change the world or change anyone's perspective. My motto is very simple. If I can help save that one man or one woman out there who is in the situation but can't see it for themselves, then the life that I have been given is a life worth living, because I've done something else with this life and nurtured another soul and empowered them through the gift of my words, which is a gift given to me, but I've empowered them with the words to fight their own battles, because that's what everybody needs. And that's what self-empowerment is. But, you know, the sad thing is, in emotionally abusive situations, you can see another person in that situation, but you can't see yourself. And psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors, I've worked with all of them for research. They all said the same. So there are all these out there. There's all these tools and mechanisms. There are therapists out there. And in this country, you're so lucky that you have so many fabulous therapists and insurance packages and all these benefits. But what about that Indian woman who is trapped in an extended family, whether she's from China or Japan or from India or from Sri Lanka or from Bangladesh, it doesn't matter. Asian women are prone to this. How can I empower her through emotional IQ to say, oh my gosh, I need to step back and take a look at this, and then have the guts and the will to fight her way out? It's through a book.
You know, Anju, I'm so glad you're here tonight, because you started out as, what was your profession?
Oh gosh, if we go back, it was a teaching assistant. And then it transitioned to an international freelance journalist. And I was writing for magazines across Hong Kong, India, Singapore. And I was having a blast. And I came to this country, everything just shut down. And I was on a visa known as an H-4 visa, which didn't allow me to work. And so, you know, and that's a book project that I'm working on right now outside of the series. That's book number 5. You know, what does that do to a woman who is on a visa, which it's basically like strangle you while you're alive, because you don't know when you'll be allowed to work. You're coming from an Asian country like India or China, which there's a cap of about 65 to 85,000 immigrants allowed per year from these two countries. And then, of course, that is on an H-1B visa where one of the spouses is here on employment. But what about the spouse who is not here on unemployment? So then they get shoved into an H-4, and you're not allowed to do anything to earn $1 of income.
Did you all know that? Did you have any idea?
Yes, because my husband was that person in Switzerland.
No,
He couldn't work in
I
Switzerland.
learned about that with a woman that I worked out at the gym with, an Indian woman, and she was so depressed, a young woman, she could be my daughter's age, and it was so hard for her. And it was so important that she came to this small group workout class, and we were therapy for each other.
Yes.
So we really helped her in ways we had no idea. When she told us similar stories that you did, and when her in-laws would come, she became their servant.
Servant, yes.
It was just so hard for her.
And that's a project I'm working on, because that's a perspective of the immigrant story that has not been told. But more than that is, I think it needs to be understood. You know, because we talk about, you know, the playing field is level. We talk about all these great books where the universe is no longer global, but it's a flat playing field. But there's so much that gets lost in translation. There is so much that it's misunderstood. There is so much that a person who doesn't have the beautiful American accent, but who has a thick Indian accent or a very strong Chinese, Asian accent, is afraid to come out and talk because they won't be understood or they'll get made fun of. And, you know, what happens to those victims of silence? And so those are the kinds of issues I address. And that's a current book project I'm working on right now. But that's where I come from. You know, it's not to pound my agenda on anybody. It's just to take you, just say, hold my hand and come with me, because I've been on this road for too long, for too alone.
Well,
And
I need to
you're in
read your
Atlanta,
book.
right? Are you in
Sorry?
Atlanta? Are you in Atlanta also, Anju?
Yes, I want
I'm
you
in
to come to
Atlanta.
Well,
Atlanta.
me too.
We're neighbors. I'm in Alpharetta. Where are you?
I'm close to downtown.
Oh, okay. You're not too
We're
far at
we're
all.
not far away, no.
No, not
You'll have to have coffee time.
at all.
Coffee time.
We
Eileen,
will.
tell, I know Anju doesn't know about your book, Freedom Lessons, so.
Oh, well, I'm an old Pulpwood queen now from 2019, but it was such a great opportunity to join a group of really caring people. It's a community of readers and writers, and I've met so many wonderful people through the Pulpwood Queens. Really, Kathy, it's been an honor and a pleasure to be part of the group. And my book is a story based on the mandated school integration in 1969-1970 school year in this country, in the Deep South. And it tells the impact of that decision of closing down a school, a Black school, and what happened in the town, how it affected the teachers, a Black teacher, a white teacher, and a high school student. It's mainly from 3 points of view that helps to tell the story. And I wrote it with the hope that it was before the pandemic. It was before thank you, Kathleen. It was before all of this year ago with George Floyd and all of the events that followed. It was always a hope that people would stop and listen and learn about each other, listen to each other. We talk too much. We talk and we present what we're thinking and what we want people to know, but we have to listen to others. And that's where, Andrew, that's where your book seems like that too. I hope that people will read my book and take a different view of their experiences, and what is it like for you to be the only person in the room, the only Black teacher in the room, the only white teacher in the room, the only white person, the only whatever you are, that you're different and feeling different, and you suddenly are faced with, how do I move forward? And so that's my quick story, but that's enough.
Wonderful, wonderful. Meryl Ain, I've got your book. Mandy and I did a video Monday of all of our April reads. So I don't know if you've seen it, but it's up on our Kathy L. Murphy channel. So you've got to check it out we're going to do this every single month. And
Yes.
me talking about the book, and then Mandy is reading the descriptions. So tell everybody about your book. I'm so happy you're here.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm so inspired. This is just such an inspiring night, and I'm listening to Anju, and she is so inspirational, and I can't wait to read her books. But I was, before she spoke, I was thinking, being embraced by all this Southern hospitality, but I'm not a Southerner. and then after listening to her, it made me more impressed with you, Kathy, because you embraced her book, and my book is also very different. So the takeaway It's a book. It's the story of twin girls who are born in a displaced persons camp after the war, and they come with their parents to New York, and they have to adjust to life in mid-century America, but that cloud of the Holocaust and the trauma follows them. And I'm going to be honest. When I wrote it, I thought, I guess Jewish people will like this book, and the fact that you chose it, and that it is resonating with lots of different people just gratifies me so much. And what I wanted to do was raise important questions, and that I think goes back to what Anju was talking about and what Eileen was talking about, and that's how do we treat people who are different from we are. What do we do when we see evil in the world? And this is as current as the news today. Do we speak out? Do we look the other way? Do we take action? Do we join in? So these are essential questions really for all humanity. And I'm so honored that in the particular story that I told, that you saw the potential for it to reach a wider audience. So thank you, Kathy.
I'll tell you, before I get to Ruthie, I will tell you, I don't know where it comes from. I was raised in an all-white town in Kansas. I mean, an oil and cattle town. I mean, it's just so weird. But my mother, I credit my mother. My mother gave me a globe, and she would get me the encyclopedias. And she would send me these books where I went around the world and I'd learn the flags and the cultures and the people. And I've always been fascinated with costumes. And I love my outfit tonight. But I've always been fascinated with the story that doesn't get told from the perspective, like Kathleen. That book was ready to be born. It's ready. And I think we're all so afraid to speak out, but we have to do it. And I'm learning, because I'm a very impetuous person. I'm learning that if you do it with love, kindness, and empathy, people will listen more. So hopefully people will be listening, Meryl, more to the Pulpwood Queens, because we are truly an international book club. And I have to tell you that Ruthie has been posting, this is her book, Acting Lessons for Living, Acting, an Enneagram Masterclass Guided Journal. This is the second book Ruthie's done. Ruthie does posts every day, and I'm so inspired, but she has a take on what she is doing that is unlike anything I've ever seen before. And I am so in love with the theater. I mean, Robert and I run our book and film club. So, we just had a ball last week with Waiting for Guffman. But your story and all this with your father and everything, tell everybody who doesn't know about your book a little bit more, Ruthie, because you're amazing. Are you muted?
Usually I don't shut up, but
okay. Well, we're all kind of that way, because we all want to say what we want to say. Go ahead.
So first I have to chime into, and I have to say that I've been a member of a lot of different communities during my lifetime, theater, acting community, therapists, coaches community. And last year, when you selected Beyond the Book Club, which was my first book, for February bonus pick, Sherry, my friend, Sherry Stout, said to me, "These are your peeps." And I was like,
huh?
I didn't.
Sierra's what?
And well, that wouldn't bother me, coming from where I come from. But I have to say that the generosity of spirit that I feel in your community is really unfound. And even tonight, where I just feel like So I haven't written a novel yet, though I am working on one now because of you guys, because of you guys. But my journey has been, my commitment is to seeing everybody as one as well, whether that's your ethnicity or your personality type, how you are as a person. And I've been devoted actually to deepening people's connection with themselves and then deepening their connection with community. And so that's how Beyond the Book Club was actually born. We are the books we must read. And so it started with when Michelle Obama had said, if you want the change to happen, you have to make the difference. You have to be the change. And so that began a year long with a colleague where every single month we gave a free workshop called Reconnecting with the Woman Behind the Mother, a journey back to yourself. And we gave these free workshops every year. This is back, when President Obama was first elected. And I said, and people came, people that were mothers, people that weren't mothers, but have the mother energy. And each month we would do a different topic that would help people dive into themselves. And because of my theater background and teaching acting and directing and so forth, experiential learning is my thing. And so they were all experiential workshops, and people connected to places inside themselves with a kind of boldness that they never had before, and then connected with each other, took their masks off with each other. And so that then fast forward, I did another of that in 2016. And that's how Beyond the Book Club was born, where I did another year of free workshops once a month for women. And we face things like making decisions. Do you say maybe too much? Yes, too much? No, too much? And kind of diving into these. It starts with each chapter, each of the 12 months is a something that we avoid looking at in ourselves. And so I write an essay, and then I give a script in Beyond the Book Club, and this will lead into where my other books are. I give a script with a facilitator. I mean, it's a whole script, a facilitator, a music master, because there's always music, props master, because there are always props, food master, and so forth. So, fortunately or unfortunately, the book, became a bestseller for, self-development and so forth. And then we had the pandemic, so it blocked these groups from meeting. And although everything is quite adaptable to virtual, haven't been able to do that yet. But then what was born, since I'm, committed to experiential learning, was the book that came out first, and then this is its companion book. And this is Acting Lessons for Living, Play the Scenes of Your Life with Intention, Presence, and Pure Potential. And this is my dad in both books, taking a bow when he was in Cabaret with Billy Crystal. And my dad and I had a very remarkable relationship because he was an actor and we had a father-daughter thing going on when I was 8 years old is when it started. And then what happened was the flip was I went away, I got a full scholarship at Northwestern, and I became his teacher. And he took every workshop I ever gave, every acting class I ever gave. He came and he was on Broadway. He was a great actor who never stopped learning and seeking. So what would happen as an acting teacher was, and this is like, I'm listening to you guys and I'm learning so much, because in much the way that Kathleen talked about, these characters, I'd feel that way about the characters I played. I would feel like they had come into my life to teach me something. And then they would recede into the background. And then when I need them, those characters that I've played over all these years, they will come and greet me again. And so I decided to write this book where I blend the whole world of theater and actor and intention and entrances and exits and all the things that actors have to think about. And I blend them into the life experience, how we have to play the scenes of our life that way, with intention and presence and pure potential. And I also use something, so every character in everybody's book that you've been talking about is no different than a play or a film, right? Has a hero's journey. They have something they think they want, and then they try to overcome the obstacles that are in front of them. And so I wrote this first book, and then I realized it, like Bonnie and Clyde, it needed a companion book. And so this companion book is all activities and journal prompts based on acting lessons for living. So it's a living and acting and hero's journey and self-development. And for years, this piece that I use called the Enneagram, which is an ancient 2,000-year model of points of view, sort of personalities, I explore that in all the books. And what I just want to say to wind up is that when I've presented, workshops all over the world, and you sit at a table with people of all cultures, and they're the number on the Enneagram that you are. And it doesn't matter their gender or where they're from, but they see the world through the same lens that you do. And it's this barrier breaker, because it talks about motivation and masks. And so it breaks down the differences so beautifully. And I use that in all my books. And I'm even trying to figure out how I'm going to weave that into a novel. I don't know how.
I bet you'll figure it out, just the way Kathleen has, and all of us. We all have such unique stories, and that's what I'm looking for. Anybody can pick a New York Times bestselling author. I mean, quite frankly, most of those books are just, they know the numbers are there, so they publish them. I want to read the story I haven't read before, from the perspective I haven't heard before. And that's what I look for. And both Mandy and Mandy was going to be here tonight, but her dog was throwing up. She couldn't come. So, but we're looking for books, and we love first book authors, and we love people who don't give up. I mean, wow. I mean, Kathleen, so many people join the Pulpwood Queens, and I don't pick their book that year and they drop off. I think that, I'm sorry, bye. They weren't here for the right reason. This is more than just a book club. It's making connections through stories that's going to make our lives more enriched and more valuable. And being lifelong learners and learning about other people, maybe we can show the world that you can be kinder by just reading a book. That's what it is. So, Kathleen, you are back tomorrow on Breathless Bubbles and Books. I'm very excited. Your posts are fantastic. Your talk tonight was more enlightening. I keep learning every time we have these things. I learn more and more. And just so you'll know what's coming up this week, Thursday night, Bobby Cornblit, who wrote Red Carpet Rivals, another Atlanta, Georgia author, we're doing a special Zoom meeting as a precursor to the Oscars, because she was married to a Hollywood studio head. She's been to everything, every Grammys, Oscar party, Vanity Fair, you name it, she's been, and she's written a wonderful book. She's has her degree in art. I met Bobby years ago when she went with us on a trip to New York. So she'll be with us Thursday night at 7 o'clock. Email me if you want to come. Then on Saturday, we've got Johnny Bernhard is going to do at 10 o'clock in the morning our Writers Club. And if you don't know who Johnny Bernhard is, she's now teaching writing full time. She's with the Texas Institute of Letters. Her book, Sisters of the Undertow. She just got featured in a TED Talk. And she is going to be giving us the same workshop that she gave at the Pat Conroy Literary Center. So who would miss that, Pulpwood Queens? Tell everybody, email me. And then Saturday night, last week, it was Robert's birthday. It was Easter. So we filmed early our pre-show. We have a book and film show. And we do a pre-show talking about the film we're going to watch. And we both are big fans of Christopher Guest, who did a mockumentary called Waiting for Guffman. And the theater, if it's the funniest movie. It reminds me of Everywhere I've Ever Lived. But we laughed so hard during the show. It's up on my Kathy L. Murphy YouTube channel. And then this week, Saturday night at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, 7:30 in Atlanta, we're doing the next film, Best in Show. And we're telling you to bring all your pups, your pooches, because it's about a mockumentary on a dog show. It's hilarious. I hope you'll join Robert and I, and I'll be posting that tomorrow. But thank you, everybody. What a wonderful night. I just love you guys so much, getting to know you better and better. I'm so happy. Angie, you're here for the first time. She's a new member, and she's going to be on our 2022 list, as all of you guys. I mean, who wouldn't want to come to this thing? It's so enlightening, but it's all about having fun too, because if it isn't fun, I'm 64, I don't want to do it. I want to have fun, and I'm really enjoying all my Bollywood jewels and my beautiful scarf. I've even got more things. I've got a whole Bollywood corner over here happening. But and then my friend Lovelace Cook, who's a Pulpwood Queen, has now started a podcast called Bollywood and Books, and I gave her your name. I'm going to be featured on it. She's going to be working with all these authors that have books set there. She has been all over India. She's worked on many projects over there, and she's worked in this country with FEMA doing relief work. So she's out of Fairhope, Alabama, and check out Bollywood and Books on the web, and check out her new little trailer. It's fantastic. So here we go, all together, reading books around the world. Let's, I wish we could all join hands, because I have this theory, and I've told this over and over. If you are fighting with someone, ask to hold their hand. They can't fight with you. You can't fight if someone's holding your hand and looking at you. Everybody always laughs. So try it next time. And
Kathy.
Peace on earth, goodwill to men. So thank you all. Yes, Ruthie.
Kathy, just one little addendum to that. You mentioned that at one of the other meetings. And then I had a couple that I was meeting with, but virtually, and they had to meet in the bathtub. And because it was the only place that they could actually be away from everybody else. And so they were in the bathtub, imagine this couple, and they were really angry with each other. And I said, a very wise woman just told me this trick. So while you're talking about how angry you are, I want you to hold hands in the bathtub. And oh my God, it just turned it around in a second. So I want to thank you for that great recommendation, because it works.
It does. I used to, my two daughters would fight, and I'd sit them on the couch and I'd say, I want you to hold hands. And the next thing they know, they'd be giggling, because you can't hate on somebody if you're holding their hand. It's so simple. It's the simplest things in life It's the simplest thing. So I'm listening to all of you, and thank you for joining us. And I hope we're on this wonderful road together. Let's see how big we can take this thing. Thank you. I appreciate it so much. So bye for now. We'll see you next week. And Marilyn, you're up next week, right? On this. No, Ruthie is? No, Ruthie is next week. And then, okay, well, Mandy's got the chart. Well, I'll be posting it. So thank you all. I love you all very much. See you soon, Robert. And oh, and by the way, I'm very happy tonight because it was his birthday and he knows that I love Happy Men's fragrance. So he sent me a bottle for his birthday. He sent me a present and I'll never forget it because I am so happy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Bye, everybody. Bye, Anju. We'll be talking. Bye-bye.
Bye.